You are listening to Ismail Hassan, and I am the founder and chief instructor of Aikido of London. Welcome to the Aikido of London discussion series. Today's chat is with Ivan Melo, where we will try to cover the relationship between Aikido and Iaido. Hello, Ivan.
Hi, Ismail. Thank you for having me.
How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. How are you?
Good, thanks. It's great that we can chat using this incredible technology. We're in a virtual studio right now, but it's great that we can even do that. And
absolutely,
and exciting, I think. Can you introduce yourself and let people know who you are and your background?
So, my name is Ivan Melo. I'm originally from Brazil, and I've been training Aikido primarily since '98, and Iaido is more recent. Probably started around 5 years ago, when I started training at Aikido of London. And that's my background. I've done all sorts of other martial arts and combative sports.
I think you've done some boxing, haven't you?
Yeah, I've done boxing for a few years. And that happened at the same time I was training and teaching Aikido in Brazil. And there was some overlapping, and I trained a little bit of boxing when I arrived in London as well. I've always liked the practice and sparring in the ring as well. So it was always fun.
And just from what you said, and also obviously we've spoken before, but your exposure to weapons and Iaido in particular is a relatively new experience.
Yes. So my experience with weapons in Brazil was very brief. When brief, I say, like maybe it was around 8 years of training with a teacher who had learned directly from Saito Sensei, because he was a deshi for Saito in Iwama. So I had that exposure to weapons. That was my best years of training weapons in Brazil. But before and after that was always a bit scavenging and trying to find whatever I could, because a lot of it was pre-internet. So I think it was just harder to find things and material, and I think that's why I never trained Iaido in Brazil as well, because there wasn't any Iaido in my hometown, and I knew if I wanted to practice some, I would have to travel to São Paulo, and it was very niche, very small, and I think just finding a way to keep my Aikido practice going was hard work enough, as a teenager, and then getting to university and all of that was already, my plate was quite full with Aikido. And so it was only when I arrived in London and started training with you at Aikido of London that I tried Iaido, which was something that I've always wanted to try. So that was my experience. And first, I think we've spoke about it before, but at first it was just a shock. Like, it was just so many details that I decided it wasn't for me at that point. And it was only, I think, a year after, in 2015 maybe, that you actually allowed me to do a class with a Iaido, and then I got hooked. I think that was it.
Yeah, I got you by then I take it.
Yeah, I think that was a good way to lure me in.
To hook you in.
Yeah.
It's and I don't know about obscure, but it is niche, and it is even though it's probably more well known today than it's ever been. In the scheme of martial arts, let's face it, it's not exactly sort of football, is it? It's not going to have millions of viewers, and really, it's not an aesthetic art in the sense that it's for TV or football stadium consumption. It's a deeply personal practice, and it is for those of us who do throw ourselves into it. It has its particular appeal, its particular impact on you, and as I introduced this podcast, it's the relationship that you're interested in. If I understand you right, and what is this correlation between the two arts, and how do we move on with it? How do they impact on each other? Does that sound like a fair assessment?
Yeah, that's definitely a good assessment of it.
What is your own view before I get into it? How do you see it at this stage in your training?
Well, at this stage, I think more and more I see them coming together, especially in the way it's practiced in our dojo, the way you teach it. And I think you can even talk about that with your experience with Chiba Sensei, how he ties things together. But now I feel all the practices of weapons, Iaido and Aikido, coming together. But I think Iaido in particular made my Aikido sharper, I think. I think it made my focus a bit more precise when I'm doing body arts. And I think that was the great appeal for me at first. I think the first couple of lessons, it felt like I was high in some kind of deep meditation state, because just that connection with your breath and the blade was it makes you come alive. I think at least it did for me. If
I can interject, like going into a zone. Which all athletes, dancers, and certainly martial artists strive to do, and sometimes we achieve. Does that sound along the right lines?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was thinking earlier today, actually, that I think because Iaido is mainly a solo practice, and the katas clearly are. A lot of the katas are situations, aren't they? They are describing some kind of combat scenario, and I think that aspect of visualization, but not having a partner, when you actually translate that into Aikido, when you have another body in front of you, I think that made Aikido practice even more vivid. And I hadn't realized it until today when I was thinking about it, as I was reflecting about my practice.
That's very interesting. There's an exchange, isn't there? That Aikido can bring something to Iaido. Iaido can bring something to Aikido. Clearly, the root, if we follow it back far enough, connect historically, but in terms of the modern context, for us, we're not medieval warriors by any stretch, but we are involved in this training, and there is a lot of things to learn, a lot of substance to this training. But if I can, I suppose if I can clarify some stuff, there's sort of a historical precedent, a recent historical precedent, which is Chiba Sensei himself and his influence, obviously, on myself and what I'm trying to do through the dojo, through Aikido of London. And it's to do with what I suppose, could be best described as a body-orientated approach. So rather than being preoccupied with technical, so where the technical in Iaido is different from the technical in Aikido. Yes, there are parts that overlap, but they are quite different. And the biggest, the most obvious one is the one you just said. Yeah, for the most part, you're on your own. Later on, it's known there's kata, that there's paired practice, but it's nowhere near as developed as it is in Aikiken or Jo to Jo, Jo to Boken, etc. And it's interesting from a personal point of view. That solo practice, it makes it quite often preferable for myself, and I think you feel the same. From what I can see, the preference is, I suppose, that you've eliminated one thing is another person, a side of an imaginary opponent, and in the real world, as people arrive to train, something obviously we can't do at the moment, but we'll see that how the future unfolds. But when we arrive in class, people arrive in different mental, physical, emotional condition, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, and sometimes it's great, and you can't pick and choose. And those who've been around long enough know that part of training is to develop a focus where don't just rely on the class to bring you into the class. Try to bring a little bit of that preparation beforehand, and a lot of people do. But again, in the real world, that's what you strive for. And from my point of view, as your teacher, as an instructor, when someone is not quite getting it, you're dealing with a different energy, a different entity, a different human being, and sometimes that can be exhausting and tiring. It's unintended by individuals, but it is the way things are as people try and learn. But in the Iaido, you've taken one layer away. You've taken that side away. You are still dealing with a person. They're dealing with you. They're the teacher, but for the best part, the training is solo, and you can focus literally on yourself, your body, your actions, your precision, and your rhythm in training, without concern of whether you've interacted correctly or not with another person. That's sort of the Iaido in a crux, but I think, and something I'm trying to convey to you and to others. The flip side of that, of course, is as you develop that more and you get more and more firm in that, you can bring that into your Aikido. In a way, it happens organically. It's not even immediately conscious. Your body started to behave in a different way.
Yeah.
And as you go on the mat, some of that detachment, maybe you're not so stuck on that person, and you're more focused on the kata. As though you're drawing a sword, as though you're doing a cut, as though you're doing a chiburi, clearing the blood. Well, you actually don't clean the blood, but that's another subject, isn't it? And then you return the sword, and if you've got aspects of that, it opens it up. It makes it simultaneously more precise, the rhythm more correct, and the application more effective. I find, and in the end, it's time and place, and the Iaido is all about time and place, and Aikido should be about time and place. But in Aikido, people get carried away by the excitement of the throw and the freedom of the liberation of taking an ukemi. And it shouldn't be. Aikido should be as precise as Iaido. It is. That moment when you get it right, that moment when everything comes together in the Iaido is no different from when everything comes together in Aikido. And but it's obscured by muscular activity or the gymnastic quality or the quality of the pairing. Of course, it depends on the two people, and it's a very aloof thing that I'm talking about. It's a very high level of attainment, and I think you're discovering that, if I'm correct. It's interesting. Um, is there anything you can add to that? Do you disagree with any of that?
No.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I agree. I was just thinking as you were talking about this embodiment and how quite naturally that process happened. It just made me think, because you lived in America for a long time and you were there with Chiba Sensei, which seems that even though those practices were a daily occurrence in your training and the dojo there, it seems that they were what I'm trying to say, well, it just doesn't seem that they were deliberately mixed, even though in the forms, because what I mean is some other teachers, like I remember Kanai Sensei and I think one of his students, Claude and Bertiom, and some other people, you see how they kind of tweaked some Aikido techniques to look more like the Iaido stance, and they squared up some stances, and whereas that doesn't seem to have happened with what Chiba Sensei was doing.
That's an interesting observation. I think it would be more accurate to say that the influence of one to the other and vice versa is more of an organic thing rather than a deliberate technical attempt. It's not a technical thing. I think it's more to do with the way the body, mind, spirit functions. That how you bring all of you into your into your art, into your training, and how you the word we choose, isn't it? We use it so often, and it's such a big thing to aim for, is the embodiment. Embodiment means going beyond the purely technical. It becomes you, and the technique is both the means to that, but it's also a part of that. It's very difficult. As we chat, there's always the danger of you separate things, and really, when you're in the midst of training, your Iaido happens as it is, good, bad, ugly, whatever that is. Your Aikido is the same, but as you go along, suddenly you notice that you're doing something, and it's clearly that influence came from one of the other arts, and vice versa. Now, we all know that it's quite possible to broaden that. I mean, you've done your boxing, which I referred to earlier. In this day and age where there's this mixed martial art, for example, where people learn many other skills, I've always liked the idea of you get one, which is your foundation, and if you wish to broaden, which is a great thing to do, you try something else. You take on your boxing, you take on your karate, you take on your judo, you take whatever it is. It doesn't have to be specifically the traditional Japanese arts. And my own personal approach when you do something like that is you give due respect for each one. When you're doing karate, you do karate as it's taught, hopefully by a good teacher, and you take it on board as it is, and you embrace it, and you try to embody that, or as close to as you would your Aikido and your Iaido, and if you do that with a few others, you obviously won't go as deep as you are with the foundation art. In our case, it's Aikido. You won't go as deep. That's the basis. It's how the body mind operates. But suddenly, if you've got elements of those in there, and hopefully strong elements, they pop out. Suddenly, the kick is there. A judo chokehold is there. Even groundwork, they appear, and they appear organically rather than you trying to learn these gazillions and gazillions of technique, which really, when the moment comes, is probably all going to go away because the body hasn't been trained reflexively, and that's a big part for myself, and it's something that I want you guys to grab. Any student who is determined to make some progress is to try and get a level of reflex where that's what comes out when really the brain isn't thinking on an intellectual level. And Iaido is great for that, I think. It cuts, literally. Again, it is a pun. Don't mind the pun, but it cuts. It goes to the core of what it is. And it's wonderful to see on Instagram, on Facebook, so many people doing these saburis. You did a whole bunch yourself. And it's brilliant because people are undertaking the training. But it's also so revealing that the distinction between someone bouncing up and down with a stick in their hand and someone going up and down with purpose, precision, function, and a quality of training, which is a big part of it. And it's obviously got to get it wrong, got to mix it up before you find that. And for all of us, it is the nature of it. And but again, once you get into the body in that way, things start to come out in their own way. I think I like to quote from Yahya Solomon Sensei, my friend and fellow Chideshi from San Diego, when he said, you first do the art, whether it be Aikido or Iaido or Aikido weapons, then the art does you, which is a great statement because it's actually quite common in the art world and in the world out there in general. First, you do life, then life does you. You make the decisions, and the decisions make you. And it's there's no getting around that in the end. And we just hope we make the right the right choices, we do make the right training. And
definitely,
it's looking pretty good. It's looking pretty good at the moment. But aside of this lockdown, of course. But
you were mentioning, sorry to interrupt you, you're mentioning a good teacher, and do you think it's harder is rarer to find a good weapons teacher or a good Iaido teacher in comparison to an Aikido teacher, or is this just by sheer numbers that because they are smaller arts, maybe they have less people, or what's your view?
I think it's a mixture of the two, but above all, it is the sheer numbers. It is in the scheme of things tiny. Aikido is not as big as it is, and we're talking about millions compared to karate or judo or MMA or jiu-jitsu. Kung fu systems is tiny, and they in turn are small compared to modern sport. Football, rugby, football for sure, baseball, basketball. They don't compare in sheer scale. So it's the law of returns in this case that to get to be in the right place at the right time, where you find someone who's been exposed to a good teacher, and they in turn start to teach. I feel fortunate myself in that respect. If I was in the, I was going to say if I was in a different continent, I was in a different continent, and made that effort, but he had to be there at the right time in his life to be able to teach you, and you have to be at a stage in your life where you're willing to learn that, and when you chuck the dice and get the odds of that happening, it's small. You realize in the blink of an eye that it's wow, how did that happen, and a profound impact that has on you, but it's the sheer numbers, and also the exposure that they were a handful of teachers in those days. How many places could they possibly cover? How much exposure could you possibly get? And those are the great teachers. There's a whole range of others, all valid. You don't have to be the great masters. You can be utterly competent and good at what you do. But it's difficult. I think it's very difficult. And so YouTube has become a little bit of a demon in a sense that it presents more problems, I would say, than solutions. I don't think that would be harsh to say. And not so long ago, an article of mine, what was the title, Ivan? I don't like Frank Sinatra, but I think he's right.
I think so. Yeah.
Or something along those lines. And what I was trying to convey a bit. I mean, I'm drifting a little bit, but I think it's relevant still that video does not convey, and so you may get something technically right, but the feeling of it you can't. It just simply does not convey. You have to be in the room. You have to, in Aikido's case, you have to feel what it's like to be at the other end of that jo or bokken. To grab that wrist, to do that strike. It's a body art, and video. If you know what you're doing, you can look, and there's a lot you can pick up, and you can embody it because you've already got the body knowledge there. But for most people, no. So coming back to the first point, I think that's an extremely difficult thing to do, to find someone where the connection to the root of it is fairly strong and fairly reliable. It's numbers in the end, and that plus a degree of dilution as well, or confusion, I think occurs. I had the privilege of Chiba Sensei, and of course with Suzuka, Takeshi, who was I believe he was the last Uchideshi of Nakayama Hakudo, and it was the end of his life, the last few years. No doubt that the senpai, his seniors, were the ones who mainly taught him directly. But if you understand any of the Budo schools, especially those old schools, just to be in the proximity of the teacher, just to see how he conducts himself, even as an old man, he probably learned so much from that. And at least that's my belief. And there's the physical training, which is probably doesn't exist in that form anymore.
That's true.
I stand corrected if it does in Japan, but probably actually. But again, the generations change, and they should change. We have to move on. You can't stay how things were in the past. You've got to find out what is meaningful today. Not in changing the forms. I'm not clever enough. I'm not brilliant enough for that. Other guys have done that who far exceed our abilities, and not just the ability to be around the zeitgeist, the background that created the conditions that allowed the geniuses to come through. One, we're not geniuses, and two, that the background doesn't exist. So we have to keep that alive in a core way of training, and that's difficult to find. It's
and as it progresses, as you're talking about the evolution of it, I wonder how that will come in with the degree of dilution that we're seeing happening with
do you mean Iaido specifically, or both Aikido
I think
and Iaido?
Both Aikido and Iaido. I was just wondering, of course, more in the case of Iaido. I know Aikido for sure. There's a lot of debate around that, of how it has become diluted, and Iaido in many ways became like, in many places, and how people treat it, like this sterile form based, simply done by aesthetics, or this, I don't know, strange sense of beauty just because of precision, and I wonder if that's just. I know we're not gonna go back to days where people are carrying swords, but with the evolution, something has to also be preserved. I think.
I think. I mean, you're touching on something that's a very difficult one. We don't know how it's going to evolve, and all we know immediately ourselves, Aikido of London members, and those who come and visit and train with us, is where we are at and what we have to do in our training. Beyond that, it's as small as it is. It's all over the world, and you or I have no influence is something each person's got to work out for themselves. But without question, the tendency towards aesthetics, it's suppose there was a choice. If we go back far enough, and I'm not exactly sure how far back you have to go, it seems like a choice was made. And how do you continue in this? And I guess teaching committees and seniors sat down and they tried to come up with a curriculum and an approach, and they eliminate certain qualities that existed with the earlier rendition, and bearing in mind that kendo, for example, where Iaido was introduced, to remind people who are familiar with the shinai,
that's true,
that you're not going to handle the sword like you handle the shinai. So it was a tool to do that, and it's a great example of how it's been utilized. And then the modern set of kata were developed from various schools. And for those who want to dig in a little bit deeper, they can go to the older schools. But some of the older schools themselves have been aestheticized, so to speak. And the precision that you speak of is, you wonder, is it the kind of precision that involves zanshin, timing, and dynamism? That precision lives within a living, vibrant Iaido, or is it something where you kill the vibrancy, you kill the living force behind it, you diminish it, and then you can focus on doing very clean, straight lines, but it's lost something. Maybe it looks prettier. I don't know. I personally don't, but I believe a lot of people
think it looks better.
Believe that. Yeah, it looks better. But I asked the question: what's your criteria? What are you looking for? And for me, it's back to this connection that you asked for, that Chiba Sensei was very determined on. And I'll give you an example. There was a lady of Ukrainian origin who used to go to Japan quite frequently and would return to San Diego, and she was quite the character, a tough lady, and loved Iaido. And of course, she goes to the schools there and comes back with the sete kata, which is a standard set. And Chiba Sensei would just invariably jump in there and say, "Okay, what are they doing over there right now?" And then she'd show them, and then he'd leap into it again. It's like, well, how does this possibly work? What is this? The mind of a martial artist, isn't it?
Yeah.
The way his mind worked was of Budo. Too many openings. Where's the money part, the money shot, as they would say in Hollywood? Where's the key? Where is the impact or the penetration in a particular action? And he'd look at it, he'd study it, and then, like all classical artists, in fact, for him to change it seems like, well, how dare you? But really, no. If you have that ability, and if you have that history and talent that he does, that is the correct way to do it. You've got to study it, and if something doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense continuing it that way. Certainly not for him, and that's something I enjoyed in that way. The outcome is a living art, regardless of whether swords are carried or not. Of course, they're not carried, and nor should they be carried around. But as a martial art in the dojo that has value in its own right, it's a living, breathing thing, without losing the original form. They've been altered or tweaked to embrace the way he thought and the way that I personally took it on. And if you bring that into your Aikido as well, openings are all over the place. This is the whole thing. The whole thing is to study. You need those openings, and the whole idea is to how do you close it? How do you place yourself at the right time in the right place, off balance the person, and then you've got a whole repertoire of things you can do once you've got that person's balance taken. It takes incredible precision and timing to do it, and the circle that I return to of connecting it is, you see it in the weapons, for example, to the parry, the counter, and the strike and the counter attack, called Kiriotoshi, striking down. I believe the roots is the Itosai
Itoryu.
teacher from Itoryu. It's effective kendo and many koryu that still remain today. But it's an incredible timing. You see it in Kung Fu. You see it in a lot of systems. And I bet you there's a version of it in boxing where there's a parry, so the guy doesn't get you, but you deflect their strike and simultaneously get them. You strike them back in one go, rather than two actions. It's done in one action. You need technical ability, you need spirit, and you need heart. You need a lot of courage and the usual stuff, a good body, posture, timing, and stuff. But such an incredibly simple thing to do, and yet such a challenging thing to attain. And when you got a guy at the other end with a 900-gram, 1 kilogram bokken trying to knock you on the head, you can't seize up, you can't get tight. You've got to open up to the movement and relax and take the chance and build the confidence bit by bit. Iaido, of course, doesn't have to deal with that, but the spirit behind it is the same. It's and coming back to Aikido, closing these holes and trying to make it work for you. Not by changing the art fundamentally. In principle, you still keep it because, as I said, I personally don't feel that I am that good to be able to change it. And between you and me, there aren't many, if any, out there that can. The caliber of Judo Sensei, of Ueshiba, we can do our bit. Something natural will come out of you. That is your Aikido. That is your Iaido, and that is your. That's the ownership. That's the embodiment of the arts as they merge and come together. But to actually take that and do something with it, you'll either change it, dilute it, or you don't know what you're doing, because you don't have the core knowledge, and I'm afraid there's too much of that around. And it saddens me to say it, and it's quality, isn't it? We're talking about quality now, and that is not so much a connection between the two, apart from the fact that you want quality in both. And I think we should embrace that. And as difficult as it is, you do your part, get your bit of training in there, and I think the benefits are immense, and it is, I guess, the correct path.
Definitely, I think with and even taking a couple of notches down, just the basic, like you're saying, coming back to your body and you're working it out for you, because some people sometimes stay in this mental, brainy place with their practice, both Aikido and Iaido, and
a bit too intellectual.
It becomes intellectual and
analytical.
Exactly. And the basic
come back to your body.
The basic function of your body, of their body is and it makes me think of how much my posture changed with the practice of Iaido, and I think that maybe was the first turn of the wheel, so to speak, was kind of correcting.
Very much.
And
so.
Once,
yes, night and night. It is night and day. Yeah, I mean, we are. I criticised YouTube just earlier, but we also have immense body of media that you can look at yourself from 4 or 5 years ago, and my goodness, the body shape and the sense of gravity has changed. It's through a lot of work. It's mainly sweat, isn't
it? Definitely.
It's not rocket science. You zoom on at a particular thing. Maybe that's your thing for the day, that particular class, and you just work at it and you work at it. And if you hit a wall, then maybe you have to pull back a little bit, and then you try again, and maybe you hit that wall yet again, and back and forth, trial and error until it's science, and the laboratory is your body, and it's not complicated. I've talked about quality, which is very aloof quality, but the aloof is achieved. Some degree of aloof is achieved through those small daily adjustments. I got some clips earlier today from Philip, in Cologne, and as you know, guys and girls are sending clips over for study and for assessment. It's the best we can do in the interim, and I love it because it's one, it keeps it going, but two, you see something that's wrong, you correct it. Someone goes off a few days later, a week later, maybe they come back, and they've changed it a little bit. Some things are better, some things are still the same. Because let's face it, you're not going to change it overnight.
That's true.
That's the process that all these arts have. And but what I enjoy is, well, my goodness, is remember that, and that, and the body isn't quite right yet, but it will be, because when that person comes back to you and you're on the mat, then you don't have to worry about the angle of the sword or the position of this or the leg going here or there. You've gone past that. Those are the technical details. You start working on the body, on how to try to relax, in a way like a dancer, that you fall into the rhythm of it. You allow your body, mind and body to surrender to the movement of the kata. And that's an indication that it becomes a living technique, which I think is fantastic, and it breathes, and from personal experience, that's when it feels right. That's because you're in your body. This is my body. It's not yours. It's not Chiba Sensei's. It's the one you've got, for better or worse. It's you've got things that are better than others in terms of certain qualities, and some things that aren't. And no one's got the full thing. And that's what both these arts reveal that. They reveal those little things. Sorry, Ivan, get me. These things can go in all sorts of directions. Absolutely. I guess. I think we should close the discussion. I think it's been wonderful. First of all, it's great to hear the questions. Is there any one last thing that you want to close with?
Just an observation, as you were talking about this process, just made me think how we never know when that change is going to happen, do we? Like you kind of have to trust and have faith in the process.
Faith, yes.
But you never know when it's actually going to sink. And sometimes you feel it that you're going somewhere with it, but a lot of times you just can't see it coming, and then that clock just turns all of us overnight, as some people say, that overnight success, and it isn't. It was built over many hours of practice.
It doesn't exist, does it? It's the often used term is process. Enjoy the process, even if it's not fun sometimes, even if it's a challenge, and that's where the people talk about a path. Sounds like life, doesn't it? It's like, well, I'm going to go and do this. What is the latest thing that I'm going to be the next Steve Jobs or Zuckerberg, and I've got a startup business, and in 5 years' time, I'm going to be worth $25 billion. And very, very few will do that. Very, very few will achieve that. And if that's your goal, that's fine. They shouldn't. I'm not saying I'm against that, but I think for a lot of people, I think they'll find that that's a rare area, and only a few will do that. And there's nothing wrong with trying that. But if we regard getting to the pinnacle of martial art, it equates to the pinnacle of a huge corporation. Most people aren't. We're not a Ueshiba, but you can be the best you can be, but it's more. But it's also more than just being best, isn't it? It's about discovery, a constant sense of discovery, and developing and growing through the art. Again, much as life, you find some things you're not good at, some things that have to be worked on, some things where you've done something and you want the reward tomorrow, but it doesn't come tomorrow. And so what do? You can give up, you can change something, or you stick at it. It's these are the choices people have to make, and I think if you're onto something that you love and you sense that value in it, you stick by that, and you'll make your your mark on it, and it'll make its mark on you. And I think that's a great thing to do.
Absolutely.
I hope that answers it. It's a long one, isn't it?
But I think,
But
my pleasure.
Thank you very much. It's great to chat.
Thank you for inviting me.